Good day everyone, so Casio and I will give our review on the video entitled Ace Your Exam Supercharged Cleaning. It has 42 videos all in all and is divided into 6 parts, namely the brain, the Pareto Principle, active learning, note-taking, memory palace, and Unking. So without further ado, let's get started. First is the brain. We all know multitasking is what they believe to be the easiest way to complete a task. In some way, it might be true. But if you're going to put it in academic-related situation, you may end up nothing but jumbled ideas, which is problematic, especially if your exam is fast approaching. The outcome will not only be the opposite of what you have expected, but it can also cause brain damage, which is not even close to being worth it.
David Mayer, in his research about divided attention and its effects, said, under most conditions, the brain cannot simply do two complex tasks at the same time. It can happen when the two tasks are both very simple and when they don't compete with each other for the same mental resources, which I can attest given I myself experienced that already. It is also observed that the main purpose of multitasking is to finish the goal faster than it's usual, but the outcome is the opposite. It even ends up having more errors than what it should have been. The fact that we put different kinds of information in our brain causes it to be impaired, and if different information are processed at the same time, it can be placed in parts of the brain that are less used. When studying, we tend to think that the more we give time in study, the more we can decipher what is stated in the book. The video showed us that taking a break is one of the most effective ways in generating our brain, and by taking a break, we can use the Pomodoro technique. It is a technique that involves time management, giving yourself a break of like 5 to 10 minutes with a maximum of 45 minutes depending on the subject. Giving yourself a reward after studying or finishing a goal can also give a boost to your morale. We have what we call in the zone, in which what we are doing in the moment is our primary goal and we do not want to be distracted, or even no one can distract us from finishing it. That made-up phrase is legit, for it is in the study that the way the brain thinks has two modes. First, the focused mode, in which there is only one specific task to be done and the brain is preoccupied by the task at hand. The second mode is called the diffused mode, in which the Pomodoro technique can be used again. Its main purpose is to mentally and physically get away with the task at hand in order for the ideas and imagination to sleep in the brain. The output that came up may possibly be from the existing knowledge and new knowledge that you have learned. When using both of the modes, you can overcome the Einstein effect, in which it prevents your brain from having a better answer than what came up. Once an answer is produced, other parts of the brain are blinded of having another. The reason for this is that the brain is functioned to have a solution without thinking too much. It is believed that the only time you should study is the day before the exam or make a project the day before the deadline. For me, I do not find it as wise as it sounds, because just like Einstein effect, you suppress the other ideas that may come up because you don't want to think too much, because you need to go to the step. Cramming is what they called it. Also, it may somehow be effective for others, but for some it is not. The output or outcome you will get when you are mentally and physically prepared are different. When you are prepared, you get to broaden your knowledge and you have the time to weigh things out, which gives you the best output. When you cram, your point of view is like the vision of a horse straight and direct, which is one-sided, and that is a problem when the output needs to be imaginative and creative in some way. There are different kinds of coping mechanisms in order for the brain and our body to grasp the learnings. For example, studying every day for about 30 to 50 minutes gives a big advantage, saving yourself from stress and desperation in times of cramming. Another is making a fool of yourself by having a deadline that is only for yourself. It may sound foolish, but it works for the many. When doing all of this, you need to be consistent, and with that, you need not to break the chain, for your goal will be erased, and just like your learnings and time, it will decrease. As we are studying, We tend to be bothered about the possibility of having the desired outcome, which is true for most of us. That method is wrong according to the video. It gives us the idea that the more we think about the goal, the more we get distracted by the different possibilities. Thinking that we cannot control the outcome, what should be done is to focus on the process in order to get the maximum outcome. We need to set a strategic plan in order to increase our productivity. For example, lowering our standards in studying. What is important in studying is the learning, not on how you finish the reading. With that being in mind, appreciate the little achievements that you have done. In that way, you get to boost your morale and get a positive outcome.
Focusing on your study and getting away with distractions are the most important things in order to have a deep study. When having a problem with the continuous notification in your social media, there are actually links in the video that serves as a blocking system in order to keep yourself from getting distracted by it. You can use them, for example, in Facebook, YouTube, and other sites that have the opportunity to tempt you. Of course, discipline is the most basic trait that one needs in order for that to happen. The second one is the Pareto Principle. It is mentioned earlier that we need to appreciate the smaller things, and by smaller things you can relate it in the Pareto Principle, in which it will help us realize that the majority of the results come from a minority of inputs. In Pareto Principle, there is a percentage of 80 over 20, in which 20% of the causes produces an effect of 80%. It need not to be 80 over 20 necessarily. We just need to take it in consideration that 100% cannot be completed without having the 20% or 80%. We need to put in our mind that we can be the 20%, we can be the difference in our environment.
The Pareto Principle can even be applied in school exams. In a reading material, not all are considered important, and with that, we need to understand which areas in the material is the 20% because the 20% serves as the most important notes in the reading materials. But then again, we should not take for granted the other 80% for they will represent as a supplementary reading in the whole material. In life, you seldom question the effectiveness of the education system. A reason for it because you did not mark the subjects or learnings that will make a difference after you graduate.
The third one is active learning. Professors and students always say we need to study smart. Though it is necessary to read from period to period, we need first to make a comprehensive plan in order for it to be comfortable. For example, understanding first the main idea of the material. Second, we need to make questions that are relevant to the reading. In that way, it is easier for us to create details about it. That is what we call the pre-reading practice. Getting the main idea of the material is sometimes difficult. Another technique is reading first the first sentence and the last sentence because it is the introduction and the summary part. With that, we can easily grasp and vision out what the material is all about.
In studying smart, it is advised not to memorize the words in the reading material. Instead, comprehend it and if needed, rewrite the important sentences by using your own understanding in your own words. To make it easier, it is needed to take notes, especially the most important ones. It was mentioned in the scientific research that while taking a note using a highlighter is just a waste of time. Alternately, you can use keywords that will cause a trigger which can help you remember the main thought in the material. Another technique that was shown in the video is the Feynman technique, in which it has 4 steps. First, reading the sentence out loud using the simplest words possible, in that way the person can understand easily without being confused with jargons. Analogy is a better way to explain it to others. Using examples that are familiar already is another. Second, identify the sentences or areas that you cannot explain. Third, go back to it and search for the sources of the information, in that way you can fill the gap. And lastly, repeat the process until you master the topic.
As I have mentioned earlier, using examples that are seen usually in the environment can be a way for the person to comprehend the activity within a matter of time. Knowledge implementation is one of the best ways in learning the study. Applying it in real life is another, giving yourself a chance to experience it firsthand.
As a student, note-taking is an essential tool for us for it will help us improve our concentration. organize and make sense of new information, effectively reduce study time, help us simplify complex topics, maintain permanent record of information, increase memorization rate, and lastly, taking is an important part of active learning system. But taking notes does not mean writing down every word we hear. We need to actively decide what's important and how it is related to what is already known and decide what to write down. There are a lot of note-taking systems out there, and mind mapping is one of the best. Sometimes we take note the whole sentence but our brain cannot generate all those information, but instead let's use keywords that will help us remember it easily. Through mind maps, this will hold keywords that we truly need in remembering ideas. For example, the central part of your mind map will probably be the topic you want to take note. The branches describe the main topic and it may be phrases or sentences, but most preferably, it must only be keywords. Our brains work by association, the ideas must be all connected with each other. Moreover, in making our mind maps, let's use curves instead of lines, symbols, and colors for it will be definitely keep our mind simulated. Mind map is more significant than the traditional note-taking system. It allows us to see the ideas bigger than bird's eye view. In this way, we can see the ideas more easily. Through mind mapping, we don't have to go through pages by pages to see the topics. Moreover, it will help us generate new ideas and have more than one central idea. Linear note-taking system takes time and is really boring, right? So as a student, we must adapt and learn how to use the new note-taking system, which is the mind mapping. Memory Palace is a powerful technique in memory enhancement using familiar spatial environment in order to recall the information. This is also known as a method of loci or journey method that has been used since the ancient years. Memory Palace is just a desktop. We use different folders to save files inside them like videos, images, documents, and music. In the same way, we will store information we want to memorize in different locations. So there are three questions will come up in your mind while using Memory Palace. The first one is how can I memorize more complex material like a chapter of a book? Second, how should I organize all this huge amount of information learned in school into a Memory Palace? The third one, how on earth can I find so many locations for all my information in school college years after my professional life? So, as an accountancy student, we all know that this is not just an ordinary course among others. We must be the best, the finest, and the extraordinary. So, when it comes to studying, most of the time we need to store the new learning information in a long term memory so that we can use it after works, not only in college days, but in professional life. In this case, we must not use the same location over and over because it will cause confusion. Instead, choose a different location to every single topic for each subject. So, for example, I am having a review on my strategic cost management and I have to choose a certain location for every single topic. After placing all those keywords or images representing each topic, even if there is a vacant space inside not that certain location, I must avoid filling it with images that is not reliable on the topic, instead leaving it empty. Having more space in the particular location will provide more flexibility by allowing me to add more information to that location as I expand my knowledge in that particular topic in the future. There are these steps in doing Memory Palace. The first one is you must study and comprehend a particular material. During the process, we also made a mind map with keywords inside it. And lastly, use the Memory Palace technique to memorize the keywords. So the last technique is Unking. Most of us think that memorizing is done by repeating a particular information over and over for hours and hours every day. This is how many of us do or have done in the past, but actually, it is a huge mistake and we have just obviously wasting our time. Repetition is an essential part of learning only if it is done in a right way. As what First Howard said, work involving higher mental functions such as analysis and synthesis and need to be spaced out to allow new neural connection to solidify. New learning drives out old learning when insufficient time intervenes. Meaning, instead of repeating a certain topic for 8 hours on the same day, it is better and efficient if we do short repetition on certain days of the week, and it is called spaced repetition. As a student, it is really hard for us to store many information in our brains throughout the school life. It's hard to keep track in all pieces of information and when to revisit it. A software application named Unking will help us equip ourselves more often on the information we must struggle to understand. It is a free and open source flashcard program that utilizes spaced repetition. Anki is a Japanese word for memorization. The SM2 algorithm created the super memo in the late 1980s, formed the basis of the spaced repetition method employed in the program. Anki is an important tool that will show the cards we have difficulty in learning more often and the cards we find easily more rare. In this way, we won't waste any time. With Anki, it may either greatly decrease our time spent in studying or greatly increase the amount we learn. Aside from spaced repetition software, Anki could also be used for active learning testing. We only need to sign up in order to synchronize all your cards and clouds. It is actually easy. You can create a deck without the deck. You can make flashcards to help you remember what you have forgotten. Anki helps you organize the flashcard by defining it as easy and good. In that way, questions will have interval in showing, giving you the advantage of remembering the questions that you think are difficult. Another feature of Anki is that within the create deck, you can create a subdeck in which you can label your conformity. For example, you can label it as first sem and the other subject as second sem. In that way, recalling the notes is more easier, increasing your efficiency. A great way to remember the notes in creating flashcard is to write with only one questions and with only one answer. In that way, you will not be distracted by other datas. You need to create different questions specifically for other datas for it will be remembered. When alone in a different environment, you may use it as an advantage in recollecting what you have learned. Use your spare time wisely.